If you're like most Americans, chances are your ancestors are not originally from here. The United States is a nation of immigrants, and welcoming people to our shores has been the cornerstone of our creed. First the English, Dutch, French, and Spanish. Then the Germans, Chinese, Irish, and Italians. And now people from every corner of the world have come to this country. America has historically been a beacon of hope for those seeking asylum and the opportunity to begin a new life. In turn, immigrants enrich our nation with new ideas, cultures, and traditions. Ronald Reagan said it best.
We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength, from every country and every corner of the world.
Today, more than 40 million people living in the U.S. were born in another country, accounting for about 1/5 of the world's migrants. But as the COVID pandemic continues to rage, these immigrant communities have faced some of the greatest challenges. So today on More in Common, we're taking a look at how immigrant communities have been affected.
We are now seeing cases of discrimination and hate and xenophobia daily.
How what we think of as American food directly flows from immigrant communities.
Truthfully, it's actually borrowed or stolen from another culture or country.
And why saving immigrant neighborhoods means saving a sacred piece of American identity.
This country is a land of immigrants, and Chinatown represents the story of immigrants in this country.
Having the courage and strength to leave everything you know behind in pursuit of a better life is in this country's DNA. And the diverse, culturally rich, and energetic society that results is something we all have more in common. First, we're checking in with KGO reporter Dion Lim, who's been covering the rise of hate crimes against Asian Americans since the start of the pandemic.
I wish I could say that the situation has improved, but unfortunately, I think it's gotten worse.
Dion, it's so good to check in with you here after all these months.
Same. I wish it was under better circumstances.
I know, and talk about those circumstances. You've been relentless in your coverage of what's going on in Chinatown, in San Francisco, and the broader community. What are you seeing?
We are now seeing cases of discrimination and hate and xenophobia daily. In a span of 3 days, we had an incident involving 2 Asian American senior citizens who were assaulted on the street. We had a case of 2 South Asian women who were attacked while walking in their very safe neighborhood. And then most recently, a woman and her 10-year-old daughter, they were told to go back to China and that they didn't belong.
Yeah, it's just so shocking. Why do you think it's such a major issue now, a national one, and so much of the coverage is coming out of San Francisco?
We're seeing activism at a level that we've never had before. Since when do you see thousands of Asian Americans marching down the street with signs chanting? That is not in our MO usually. Growing up, I was always told, keep your head down, your nose clean, and that is the way to success. But now we're starting to feel it. The momentum is building, and it's an exciting time. Our people are being attacked. We are being set on fire. We are being assaulted in the broad daylight. For what? For just being Asian. And I think we've reached a fever pitch now where we cannot stay silent any longer.
Incredible energy there and a movement building. And one of the things that I learned was that Asian Americans are the fastest growing demographic in the United States. And how do you think that's going to impact the broader culture and be a benefit, even though there's obviously some groups that raise concerns around that?
With the growing Asian American population, I would expect a growing understanding for people who are not Asian American to maybe open their eyes a little bit more and realize that the person that is next to them very well might have a story where they have been targeted, where they have been a victim of discrimination. And when you put a face to it, it makes these issues come alive.
Well, thank you for sharing so many of these powerful stories, and I see it on my feed, and I'm just stopped in my tracks to see both the level of racism that is going on, but also those moments of redemption and people saying, I'm going to get through this, we're going to build back. So thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for chatting with us today. We're heading down to the heart of Chinatown to talk to a woman who's been doing what she can to help make sure these small businesses are still growing and getting back on track.
Chinatown is really the best of New York. It represents diversity and inclusion.
You come here very beginning.
5 years.
5, 6 years. I feel like if I stay, I might run into debt.
My name is Grace Young. I'm a cookbook author, a culinary historian, and I'm based in New York City. I have lived here for almost 40 years, and I love New York's Chinatown. And I have become sort of an accidental spokesperson for Chinatown.
Grace,
Hey,
how are
Mike.
you?
Good to see you.
So Grace, we're here in the park, sitting 6 feet apart because COVID has had such an impact on this neighborhood, obviously this world. How much has changed here?
I mean, from the very beginning, Chinatown was one of the first neighborhoods that was impacted. There was an immediate shunning of Chinatown, so these streets were really quite abandoned and deserted.
And talk about Chinatown in New York, obviously is an extraordinary place and has been for some time, but this is the history there behind this neighborhood.
This country is a land of immigrants, and Chinatown represents the story of immigrants in this country. And it's not just Chinese immigrants. These buildings, which are century-old tenements, housed Italians, Irish, Jewish immigrants, and now the Chinese. And it's always been a foothold for immigrants to get a start in this country. And for so many, they were able to actually realize the American dream because of Chinatown.
And you mentioned earlier, Chinatown was one of the first areas that quickly started to shut down restaurants, but also saw a lot of patrons pulling back. And then incidents of racism have taken place both here and in San Francisco and beyond. What do you think's fueling that kind of racial tension right now?
Well, certainly calling it the China virus is really, has been devastating because for Chinese Americans and Asian Americans, they have no responsibility for the virus, and yet they've been impacted so tremendously.
What makes Chinatown unique in broader New York?
98% of the businesses in Chinatown are mom and pop. Each one is one of a kind. And through this whole pandemic, I realized that I've really taken Chinatown for granted. I assumed it would always be here. And I realized that I come here not just for great food, that this is where we come to celebrate our birthdays or the promotion or your anniversaries. Those are the kinds of experiences that leave a memory in your heart. And when they disappear, that part of your life is lost too. I mean, it's like losing a dear friend or a relative. So that's what Chinatown is to me. It's community, which is so lost in America now, or so forgotten.
Coming up.
The Southwest and the borderlands are not a microcosm of anything. They are what we are going to look like as a nation.
Chinatowns across the country have been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, but they're not alone. Immigrant enclaves across the country are also dealing with the pandemic, and how they evolve tells us a lot about the history of our country.
When you arrive in this country, having a sense of community and finding a group of people that you're familiar with, the significance that it has, it's a sense of community, and it's like, oh, there's a large Somali community, or there's a large Hmong community, or there's a large Oromo community, or even there's a large Mexican community or a Latinx community. Every new community that joins our larger community, the American community, or our larger Minnesota community, brings strength, new ideas. We benefit from each other if we are open to the idea of learning from one another, of interacting with one another, of seeing each, as neighbors, as, allies, as one community.
The Southwest and the borderlands are not a microcosm of anything. They are what we are going to look like as a nation. It reaffirms diversity. It reaffirms the environment. It reaffirms that that history is not a bad thing we should ignore. And it reinforces some very basic American values about family, culture, respect, that I think only make us better.
These neighborhoods offer economic and social mobility to immigrants coming to America, but new anti-immigrant legislation might put these communities at risk.
Chain migration really refers to family-based migration, which is the backbone of the American immigration system. Hundreds of thousands of people, sometimes 1 million people a year, are allowed to move to the United States based on petitions that are filed by their family members. They go through an intensive application process, they wait in line for many years, sometimes they wait in line for decades, and then they're eventually allowed to resettle in the United States, join their family, and live here permanently.
The fourth and final pillar protects the nuclear family by ending chain migration.
The president talks about family-based migration and chain migration as if it's this real drain on American society, because often it does allow people into the country who are coming from poorer backgrounds, who have less education, and who are improving their lots in life by coming to the United States. But it's really important to keep in mind that our economy really is propped up by those very immigrants. In big cities like New York City, they work as bike messengers, they work in restaurant kitchens, they work in fields picking crops. Economists really have found that those low-skilled immigrants are actually people that our economy needs and relies on it, that they do have a net positive impact on Americans.
Under the current broken system, a single immigrant can bring in virtually unlimited numbers of distant relatives.
I think the misconceptions start right from the beginning with this false notion of the idea of an anchor baby. So people tend to think that if someone comes to the United States and has a child here who's born a United States citizen, that immediately, their citizenship as a baby becomes a golden ticket for every one of their family members to come to the United States. That couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, you have to be at least 20 years old before you can even petition for your parent to be able to join you in the United States legally. There are very strict caps on the number of family-based visas that are granted each year, that many people end up waiting years, sometimes decades, in order to get them. And I think if you get rid of, on the other side, family-based migration entirely, you're really cutting off access to those important ties that allow people to thrive in a particular society.
Coming up.
In times of need, I see the community really come together. That's like the silver lining that I see during this whole pandemic.
Behind me is No Moi, the oldest restaurant in Chinatown. It's celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. But it's going through some tough times, like so much of the area. So we decided to check in with its owner to learn more about how they're getting through this.
I often say, I am Chinese American, but I'm also American Chinese. I'm just as American as I am Chinese. No Moi Tea Parlor is a restaurant established in 1920. We are celebrating our 100th year this year. With every kind of negative thing, pandemic, I see opportunity. People aren't coming here. How do we bring the experience to people's homes? I want to say that we found some success in that. We're doing all these virtual classes online. Pivoting to frozen dumplings was a big deal for us this year. But all of this is just part of our survival mode. We try to do as much as we can given the parameters to just bring awareness to the neighborhood. The beauty of that is that this community really comes together. A lot of the residents that live here now, majority of them are older, but I see a lot of young folks come back and they are more technology savvy. During the pandemic, we've got some just very grassroots organizations run by the youth of Chinatown, helping all these mom and pops weather the storm. Anywhere from making a donation to gifting meals to essential workers to the elderly. Makes me really proud to be a part of this community. In times of need, I see the community really come together. That's the silver lining that I see during this whole pandemic. And you know what? Restaurants will close, businesses will close, and that's inevitable. But those organizations really give businesses a fighting chance. The restaurant originally was established by the Choi family of Chinatown, and my Uncle Wally started working for the Choi family in 1950. He eventually purchased the restaurant in 1974, and he's been running it up until 2010, when I essentially inherited the restaurant from him, and I've been running it for the past, 10 years. So No Moi, because it's 100 years, has gone through a lot of different iterations. You know, prior to my time, it was honestly just an old school dive. My uncle always kept it open. You know, all the dim sum chefs in the neighborhood knew to come here because this was the spot to play some cards, play some mahjong, like have a cigarette, grab a small bite, you know, before you go home. My uncle really did a good job, like bringing the community together. But fast forward to now, I think we are still a community place, just different. This community has faced a lot more racism and xenophobia. Like January, February, we were already seeing like deep declines in business. The awareness piece is so important. Like I've been a big advocate of like, hey man, like come and eat here. Like you don't need to patronize my restaurant. Patronize something within this community because we really need it.
A few years ago, Time magazine suggested there were more Chinese restaurants than McDonald's, Taco Bell's, Pizza Huts, and Wendy's combined. So that begs the eternal question, what exactly is American food? We talked to some chefs to find out. What's more American than apple pie? Well, actually, apple pie isn't American, it's English. So what exactly is American food? We sat down with 4 chefs from around the country to boil it down.
What is truly American cuisine? The first thing I think about is Native American.
Cooks are cooking based on the landscape.
When I think of American cuisine, I couldn't tell you specifically what it is because truthfully, it's actually borrowed or stolen from another culture or country.
I think American food is really a co-optation of like food from those who've migrated here, you know?
Just as our country was founded by immigrants on someone else's land, our cuisine was built by immigrants in someone else's kitchen. It's a combination of these immigrant cuisines and the indigenous people and the food they encountered that created the cooking styles we know and love today.
New Orleans cuisine is a combination, all right? You think of 2 styles of cooking, Creole and Cajun. So for Creole cooking in the city, you had sauces coming with the French, the picante came with the Spanish, the Africans showed how to cook it all on a low fire, but it was the Indians that showed everyone how to use all the herbs and spices that were going wild to season it.
I call Texas Mexican food the food that is indigenous to central southern Texas and northeastern Mexico. The ingredients are those that are indigenous to this land. So that's what our Texas Mexican cuisine is.
But these cuisines continue to evolve, so where do we draw the line between food appreciation and appropriation?
You can appreciate food for sure, and especially when you are economically supporting the folks who, you know, make that food or it shifts, and you as perhaps an outsider to that cultural production have some kind of economic gain that does not support that community, that becomes problematic.
When you don't educate in food, anybody can open up a Vietnamese restaurant, for example. You can make a dish. Well, when you're presenting this to your customer for years and years and then decades, right, and centuries, you begin to erase the dish after the many interpretations of it without ever acknowledging its original roots and where it stems from.
If we take the time and research a dish or research an ingredient, that opens a whole new door to learning about a group of folks from different countries. So it's hard to, I think, put our finger exactly what is American cuisine, but it's, I guess, the best description. It's a lovely mixture of all of us put together.
When we come back.
People look at them as the most vulnerable population, and yet they're still fighting for the next generation. That is what's so special. My favorite scene of all movie is Ratatouille at the end when Igor takes up that one meal and it just like face back. So I'm like, that's what I'm gonna do. Nothing says more about home than when you hand them this familiar box of meal. My name is Don Lee, and I'm one of the organizers from Homecrest Community Services. So what we do at the center is a place of socialization for seniors and for the community. When we noticed very early on, even by January, that a lot of the local shops closing up, having our membership, the seniors, to shelter at home is absolutely the most important thing. So what we decided immediately was to switch to a delivery to home approach. The senior populations go from 60 to 104. That's what we have. Most of them used to grow up in Chinatown together. The lack of affordable housing, the lack of housing in general in Chinatown forced them to move out, and they all moved to Brooklyn. So they pretty much live along the subway line that connects to Manhattan's Chinatown. I come to London, we cover 20 zip codes. So we started with 60, 80 meals, and we went all the way at the peak. We were cranking out 1,000 meals a day. The reason why HomePress was formed is all for serving and recognizing the seniors who have done so much for their family and for the community. And what we also recognize, what's dear and near to them, is family and tradition. They're all from Chinatown, so we know that there's certain things that they love. And as long as we're making the deliveries, how do we elevate that a little bit? How do we really, let them know how much we care? So we went to Kemhing, the cake place, where I know that they have the sponge cakes, right? So we literally pick up the cake that morning and deliver it the same day to get it to them. So when they got that cake, we got such a huge response, right? It was such a surprise to them. And the fact that Kemhing is still open was something so special to them. What they're concerned about is, are the small business going to be able to survive? Will the chef here, will the waiters here have the same opportunity to raise their generation as they did? That's what they're worrying about. And it's funny that some of the seniors says, we're treating them like how a parent would care for their children. But these last couple of months made me realize, like, they do this every day for the last 60, 70, 80 years for their kids. People look at them as the most vulnerable population, and yet they're still fighting for the next generation. That is what's so special. We can see that they're the strongest people around, that they came to this country not knowing a word of English, not knowing what the future may bring, and says, I'm just gonna make it.
Thanks so much for watching More in Common. I'm Michael Koenigs, reporting from Chinatown.